Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Kemmler. Our next guest is the writer-director behind the upcoming drama Burden. In it, Garrett Hedlund plays a young man involved with the KKK who has an awakening following his involvement with a woman played by Andrea Riseborough. Please welcome the director of Burden, Andrew Heckler. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. A summarized version. There's a lot more that happens in this movie, and it's not just his involvement with Andrea Riseborough, but with Forrest Whitaker's character, who plays a preacher in this town. This is your first film. A pretty tough, sprawling endeavor for a first film. What was that like going into that? How did you start writing this? And were you ever like, oh my God, this is gonna be the first one I undertake?
Yeah, I mean, not by choice. So I wrote it in, I first heard of the story in 1996. I saw it in a blurb in a newspaper. And then it said, Klansman opens redneck shop and KKK museum in a small southern town. And then subsequently, I put that away and thought I'd get back to it. But before I did, in 1997, I saw another article that said Klansman sells redneck shop to Black Baptist minister. And I thought that was just nuts. And I actually went down to Lawrence, South Carolina, and I ended up spending a lot of time down there, getting to know the people, getting to know the reverend, getting to know the church. I actually even went back and spent some time with the Klansmen to get another perspective on who they are, what they're all about, you know, and try to really get under their skin so I could make a complicated movie. You know, I wasn't looking to make a movie simply about good and evil. I was looking to make a movie about people. And so, you know, if you're going to make a movie about good and evil, you put them, you know, in capes and masks, and you have them fly around, and, you know, and they're superheroes. But these are people, and so that was the most important thing to me. You know, as far as like you know, truthfully, I never really thought about it too much. I unfortunately had 15 years to figure out the movie in my head because it took from 1997, 1998, when I first started writing it, to 2016 to film it. We went through a lot of turns and
When did you first have a draft of the script ready to go?
in 2000.
In 2000. So
Yeah.
it took about 15 years to get it off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, we set it up a bunch of times. I mean, it's pretty crazy. We had literally almost the entire cast of the Avengers attached to the movie at one point or another. Forrest actually signed on to the movie in 2006.
Stayed with it.
And then when we booted up again in 2016, he was still in.
Wow.
So that was pretty amazing. And a really, you know, when Forrest Whitaker signs on to your movie, it sort of changes the game. You know, it attracts other actors.
People want to act alongside him. They want to be in scenes with him. Right?
Yeah.
They want to see what this guy Forrest Whitaker is all about.
Yeah, so it was really helpful for the movie in terms of getting the other cast members in. But he was always a believer in the film and what it stood for and what the character was.
When you talk about making a movie about people and not about good and evil, that really comes across in Garrett Hedlund's performance, because he doesn't come across as an evil person. He comes across quite often as an abused child, as a victim of some kind. Victim may be too strong of a
Right.
word, considering he is a member of the Klan at the start of the movie. But he's looking for a father figure, be it Wilkinson at the top or Whitaker by a certain point within the movie. How important was that for you, and when did you find that within the character?
So, you know, I got to know Mike Burden pretty well. But I got to know a lot of them. And for me, you know, racism is very complicated, you know, and there's a lot of factors at play. You know, victim is a strong word. I would say that, you know, it preys on the vulnerable. Yeah. And so, you know, you're able to hijack someone's life into hatred when they're vulnerable through economics, through family, and Mike was vulnerable for a lot of reasons.
I think Andrea Riseborough's character has a line in the film to Garrett Hedlund's character where she says, "We're poor white trash just trying to step on them to make ourselves feel better," right?
That's a huge, you know, for me, that line is really a big part of the movie. When you don't have anything, you know, when you've been left behind, when you're disenfranchised, what do you have? Well, I feel better I'm better than that guy. So you try to step on someone else, you try to blame someone else for your feelings of self-hatred. And I really believe that. You know, they're just trying to get by. Now, you know, Mike Burden's character, Garrett's character, I think it's the way he came at the performance. There's so much self-hatred wrapped around, even in his movements.
He's like a feral animal at times, right? He cannot stop pouncing and moving around and twisting and turning, which I mean, I've known people like that. That comes from fear when you're a child and growing up and not being able to stay in the same place, out of being discovered or sought out. You know.
Right. Yeah. And you mask that in anger and toughness and violence. That fear. And so. With a lot of these people, what I said, they're hijacked into families, and they're families that they look like family, they smell like family, they feel like family, but they're families built on hate. And families built on hate are only skin deep, whereas families built on love, go all the way to the heart, but they are harder, they're more complicated. It's easy to hate someone. That's sort of what I was trying to create is that the Klan, the family at the beginning, it feels like a family. They care about each other, and that's hard for us to see. I didn't let off the characters easily. I didn't let off the actors easily in what I wanted them to perform, and it doesn't let the audience off easily.
Well, I think it doesn't let them off even when it comes to Mike's transition in a way, in the sense that he is still at the top, and even throughout it, very reticent to be taken in by Whitaker, very reticent to in any way open up to him.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to make a point of it, maybe too much so, but I wanted to make a point that the leopard doesn't change its spots overnight. Yeah. We see a lot of movies that make it very easy for people to change, like one event and they're changed, and off we go into the sunset and the movie ends, and that never happens in this movie. I mean, he's changed by the end of the movie, but the process is painstaking, and you get the feeling that that this is it's anything but easy. Put it that way.
Did you ever have any fear? I mean, in this particular moment in time, I think there is a discussion about the weight that is placed on the stories of the oppressor rather than the oppressed, and the change and the glory of the oppressor becoming a sort of savior or becoming a better person. Did you ever worry about telling that side of the story? I mean, I don't think that you lean too hard in one way, and you focus a lot of the movie on Forrest Whitaker and on what his family deals with, and sort of in taking in or dealing with Garrett Hedlund's character. But were you ever worried about showing so much of that side?
I never really thought outside of the story. When I first heard the story, it meant so much to me that these three people, I call them these three heroes, in the middle of a small southern town, in South Carolina, did something super brave, which I thought would be a metaphor for everybody. That the story was so simple, that simple message of you can never turn an enemy into a friend through hate. You can only turn an enemy into a friend through love. That simple message I thought would resonate. It resonated to me in 1996 and 97. It resonated to me in 2008. It resonates with me now. Hopefully at some point it won't resonate with anybody any longer. But I never really thought about white savior, black savior. Someone said to me yesterday in an interview, this is more of a black savior movie. And I thought, yeah, maybe it is more of a black, but it doesn't matter. It's a movie about how do you, instead of just name calling, it's more about how do you understand someone, open your ears, create a discussion around how do you take someone out of a hate group? How do you take someone whose whole life has been steeped in senseless hatred and bigotry and move them into love and tolerance? Well, in this particular story, it's through the love of a woman and then the faith of a reverend, and the relentless love of a woman and faith of a reverend, because he doesn't make it easy on them to keep believing in him. And I think I show that clearly, that it's tough, not just for Mike, but it's really tough for everybody who's trying to do it, not to lose their temper or give up on him.
Yeah, because he tests their abilities a few times.
He sure does.
Yeah. When you decided that when Garrett Hedlund decided to step in as Mike and play this role, what sort of conversations did the two of you have about his performance?
So I was very fortunate. I mean, obviously the acting is amazing. It's tremendous. And everybody, I think that what was a real advantage for me, especially as a first-time director, was I'd been after this story for so long, and I'm so passionate about this story that passion bled into the actors understanding the meaning of this to me and the possible meaning to other people. So we also met all of the real people. So Andrea went and we met Judy, right when she got off the plane in South Carolina. Forrest went and met the Reverend and the congregation. And Garrett and I went and met Mike Burden. which was, a really interesting experience. And Mike couldn't have been more welcoming. So, Garrett got to see the real Mike Burden and spend some time with him. Now, the real Mike Burden is very different from the guy in the screenplay. It's 20 years ago. He's a different guy. And so that was tricky with Garrett, to tell him, yes, you're going to breathe this guy in. And he did. I mean, there are scenes in the movie, and I'm being quite honest, that it doesn't feel like Garrett. It feels like Mike Burden, especially the scene you just talked about where he's sitting at the car after she says that line to him. That looks like Mike Burden, not like Garrett Hedlund. I mean, he sort of just inhaled this guy. But we also were very clear on, you're not playing Mike Burden, you're playing the guy that you are envisioning in the screenplay. And so he did a tremendous performance.
I've never seen him be so physical in a role. He's usually cast as a stoic character of some kind who's sort of repressing his emotions and his feelings. And while you could say that of this guy, that's not true at all. He's actually wearing his feelings on his sleeve in every scene. He just doesn't say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't articulate it.
Yeah. But it's all there. I mean, everything is there in terms of the person that he's looking up to, the person that he hates, the person that he wants to be. It's all in his eyes, and it's all in the movement of his body.
I think the performance, so many people
Not
now,
a good poker player.
No. And so many people now and so many actors, everybody's playing it safe to a certain degree. And Garrett did not play anything safe here. He left it all out there. I mean, he went for it. And I appreciate that. I love that idea. There's this whole adage amongst actors, and, I was an actor a long time ago, that less is more. And sometimes you think less is more if you can't do more. I mean, and that was Stephen Lang said that to me on my first job. He said, "Who are your favorite actors?" And I said, "Well, like Pacino and De Niro. I was a New York actor, and, we idolized these guys, and Redford and Newman." And he said, "Do they do less?"
Pacino, no.
No.
He's great for it.
Yeah. And so, Garrett really went for it, but he was, I always say that, the guy when you see the movie, you realize he was the first guy on the set every day, the last guy to leave every day. He left it all out there every day. I mean, he was a dream for me as a director, just a dream. But they all were. I mean, from Forrest, who, Forrest is a very method actor, and he's very introspective. I mean, I have to say, I think Forrest is going to be sainted. I mean, it's not just his acting work, but his humanitarian work. He's just an amazing individual, But he also was incredibly giving to a first-time director. He was, you just felt like he was there to do his best work and give you the support you needed.
You've worked with actors. You directed theater prior to directing this film, so you've worked with actors, and you're an actor your whole life. But as a first-time director of a movie, working with someone like Forrest, who is a legend, knows what he's doing, how do you step up and direct? Or did you feel like, in a way, you don't really have to direct their performances, you just have to tell them where to go?
There's a little bit of both. I was, like I said, I was very lucky. Andrea Forrest, Tom Wilkinson, another, somewhat legend, and even, in Usher. I mean, Usher came utterly prepared. Usher came, he met with me 3 times before he took the role. He wanted to make sure my heart was in the right place, the movie was in the right place, it was a project he wanted to get involved with. But when he showed up on the set, he wasn't messing around. Crystal Fox, Austin Hebert, I have to mention, and I can't forget the kid, Taylor was unbelievable. As a child actor, that is gold. But again, was it daunting? It was daunting. I mean, these are the most respected actors in the industry, and I'm a first-time director. I think that the 2 most important things in terms of directing these guys was, like I said, passion, but also preparation. How I wanted to shoot, what I wanted to accomplish, what I wanted to do every day, which isn't easy on an independent film. You have a limited budget and a limited time.
I imagine you didn't have any rehearsal time either, or did you?
Not so much, a little bit. But also it's about respect. It was my own technique, but I always said, I won't move on until all of the actors say, let's move on. And sometimes we would do 2 takes, and everybody's like, good. And I was usually pretty good with it. But sometimes people wanted to try stuff, and I let them. So I think there's a good give and take between a director and an actor. In the theater, I always said, I have a real clear vision for what I see exactly what I want. But I want you to bring what you see, And then somewhere in the middle there, I'll listen, there's the best performances. There's the best play.
Well, in theater, when you're directing theater, you have far more time to collaborate with the actors, right? I mean, you have a month, 6 weeks, something like that, to sort of really figure out what the performance and what lines mean to your actors. There's also more to explore within the lines as well, because it's all about writing, whereas a scene in a movie is, a page and a half, 2 pages, everything is very direct. But still, how do you have those conversations with your actors, or do you hope that they show up to set pretty well aware of what they're saying and why they're saying it, so you can go about the business of figuring out where to put them?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. Where to put them wasn't for us. I didn't want to put them. I wanted to give them freedom. When you see the movie, what I wanted to create was sort of a documentary feel, a beautiful realism, where it was shot beautifully, but it felt like you're there. I left a lot of what I call mistakes, or purposefully putting the camera in places where I don't think people would think directors would do that, behind people and things like that, peeking out and sort of, following someone's shoes for a while. But we shot 2 cameras quite a bit. We shot it like a play quite a bit. So it's pretty funny, because Tom used to ask sometimes, he would say, am I in this shot? Because Tom is a, very professional, British-trained film actor, and theater actor. And he would say, am I in the shot? I said, sometimes I don't know, Tom. Which, for Thomas, and he would sort of go, okay, and suck it up.
Oh, great.
Yeah, suck it up and do it. But, the camera was always wandering around. So we would get into a space, we would walk around, we would do it instinctively, what the characters wanted to do. And then we would do it a couple of times, and then we'd start shooting it. So, we would get gold quite a bit. But again, I think that for me at least, I wasn't dogmatic on this movie at all about, like, this is what I want and you give it to me.
How were you not that way, having sat with the script for 16 years, 15 years?
I'll tell you a good story.
How did you, you're an actor, so you're told to let it go, right? And be in the moment, but 16 years of thinking about what your movie's gonna be, how do you do that?
So I'll tell you a perfect example of that. So there were a lot of scenes that I didn't know. But there are a couple that one scene in particular, I knew this scene, I had seen this scene, I knew the apartment, I knew the angles, I knew the lighting, I knew this scene. And it's the scene when Judy, Andrea, tells Garrett, Mike Burden, okay, enough is enough. So I knew exactly the calm explosion that I want. I knew it all. I mean, I had it down to here. And so Andrea comes up right before we're about to shoot, literally the moment before we shoot, and she says, I want to try something different. And I said, look, I let you guys do everything. This is something I know. This is something I want. This is something you need to do for me. I've seen this scene. This is the scene that I know well. She said, I'd like to try something. And I thought, okay, here we go. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. Why don't you try something? You try your thing, but I'm telling you, in this instance, don't be upset if I don't use it, because I know what I want here. So I said, and then we'll shoot it my way, but you have to promise me. And she said, okay. So she went, and she did it her way. And the way she did it was all internal, and her lip was quivering. I mean, and I sat there watching the performance, and she came over to me, she goes, okay, thank you so much, and now now I'll do it your way. And I said, we don't need to do it my way. Right. That's good. That's the way it should go. And so it was me, I never would have gotten that performance, and that's in the movie, that's what we used. We never shot it any other way. I didn't even want to give myself the option. I loved what she did. So that was an instance as a director for me where I was like, I didn't know what I had.
Was that early on in the shoot, or was that like halfway through, near the end? Because that's an incredible lesson to go into a movie learning.
It was early-ish. It was early enough, but not that early. I mean, it was early enough. It was early enough that I trusted her. She trusted me, so it wasn't right away. But it was, it was a great moment for me going forward. But it's a great moment for me, period.
How much do you think your background helped you when it came to making a film like this, or making this film the way that you did?
I think that. So when I wrote the script, I was single, and I was living in New York, and I had a lot of flowing brown hair. When I shot the movie, I had 3 kids. I was living in Los Angeles, and I have gray hair now. So it was a long time to prep for it, which I think was really helpful. And I think that, I like to say that having children was very helpful. Not because anybody's children, it's just it gives you a great perspective on management. But I think that, for me,
management?
just because when you have 3 kids, running all over you always, you have to manage it all without losing your mind. And so that's sort of what a movie set is, except there's like 200 kids running around and you're trying to manage it all and not lose your mind. But, I think that the most important thing, I think back to the theater that we created down in Tribeca and our mantras. And it's very similar when I think back to what I did. I think that my acting experience was really important in making this movie. It's an actor's piece first and foremost. If the acting, any time there was weak acting, it didn't end up in the movie. Any time, because these guys, our lead roles, were so prepped and so ready to go. Anytime that it felt false, it had to leave the movie. So I think that was great experience as an actor and what I saw. And then, from our theater company experience, one of our big things was to take kitchen sink dramas and to push them way out, right, and make them, more experimental. And the other one was to take experimental theater and bring it all in and make it intelligible. And so what I realized when we started looking at Burden and how to make it and how to shoot it was, I thought if I just put the camera on sticks and have these guys act, I'll have a good movie. But then I realized that with a movie that is this sort of foreign, this intimate, and with all the documentaries we're seeing these days, I wanted the audience somehow to subliminally think that this was real, that they're watching real people doing real things and not actors. And so that's when we started developing the camera idea of making it sort of this wandering cinema verite camera where, like I said, there's shots where you're going like, hey, get out of the way so I can see what's going on. No director would do that in his right mind. So it has to be real. And then the performances, honestly, made it feel very real. There's a scene at the end of the movie that's, we got a video recorder from 1997, and we used it to get that feel of what video looked like back then. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, so that was the real guy, right, in the video? And I said, no, that was Garrett. That's Garrett doing Mike. And, so yeah, a lot of my history, not only professionally but personally, really helped me in the journey.
Did you shoot that both ways, or did you just shoot that on the video? Because I could imagine being a little worried that, like, you're getting this sort of climactic, beautiful performance, right? And it's like, should we shoot it on the main cam as well as the VHS camera here? What?
We shot it on both cameras.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I know, and it's intercut. But yeah, no, and the way unfortunately movies are made, that was day 2 for Garrett. Was like one of his big emotional climaxes, having gone through a whole experience as a character. As an actor, that's day 2 on the set. So that was a lot to ask from him.
Did you look at any other directors who shoot in that kind of narrative verite style prior to going out to shoot?
Yeah, I mean, we did. There's a lot of the sort of Latin directors are my favorite directors anyway. And so, that sort of Amoros Perros and City of God and those kind of movies are amongst my favorite movies anyway. So you have a proclivity to sort of shoot what you love. And so that was a big inspiration for me to go that way. And also Cassavetes, is another one of my favorites. So I shot with the idea that it seems real. And Cassavetes movies, you feel like, unfortunately, you're watching, and it's unfortunately because they're mostly tough and tragic, but you feel like you're watching real people. You don't feel like you're watching actors.
You also have, I always find with Cassavetes, you actually have no idea where the camera's going to go or where it's going to be, because he was intentionally kind of disrupting where you thought the camera might go in that moment or how it might move.
Yeah, and you never knew. And so we did a lot of that. We had two amazing. Jeremy Rouse was my DP, and Michael was second. But Michael was always roaming around. I mean, he's an amazing shooter, and and I was always pushing. I wanted to push the envelope on the movie, so I would say closer. I want to be in his head. And my editor, Julie Monroe, she's amazing. And then she loved the idea. I'm like, let's make this movie. I explained my concept to her, and she really allowed it to be pushed out. So much so that a lot of times Jeremy, the DP, he was like, you kept we're repositioning the camera, and you kept it in the movie. And I'm like, yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I like that too. We have time for a couple questions from the audience. The first one is from Kiana right here. Hey.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Great.
Good.
So being that this is the first movie you directed, do you have any memorable experiences on set that you can share with us?
Boy, any or how many? I mean, really, there's an infinite amount of stories from the set. I will say, I'll give you a couple that are specific to the movie that are wild. Like I said, it's about management and keeping your calm, but there are moments that you have no control over. And so we had to recreate the Redneck Shop and KKK Museum, and we had to recreate it in a real small southern town. So we had long days, and I'm driving home. It's 10 o'clock at night, and I get a call from my production designer as we finished building the shop. And she said, you have to come. And I said, come where? I'm going home. She said, you have to come back to the shop. And I said, I'm not coming back. What's up? And she said, people are here and they're shopping. and that just sort of blew our minds. Now, in defense of anybody, I don't know if it's a joke, but it was eye-opening that, so we think, when you see most movies about this kind of situation, Klan, and, you think 1950s, 1940s, 1960s. 1996 it feels present. It feels present day. When you watch the movie, you don't understand that it feels very present day, and it's in 2020 as well. That was eye-opening for me to think that, when is this going to stop? Like, when is this simple lesson going to be learned? And I'm not saying it's easy, the meaning of the movie. I like to tell the story that, it's not easy to get along with your neighbor. Why? And that's just, it's a lack of communication. But that was a pretty eye-opening experience. I mean, there are so many experiences. The little boy in the movie, Taylor Gregory, was such a gift, and so was the boy who played Dwayne, because kids, they are what they are. Either they're going to be there or they're not. You can't really do much about it. And this guy was so loose and so crazy and so fun, and I had so much fun with him. I also think I was missing my kids. That we danced a lot. We had a really good time making a really tough movie, and I think we needed to. The roller skating scene was hilarious, and Usher could skate. Andrew had never been on skates, so all of that footage is sort of real and genius. But with Taylor, so he's heading to the set on his third week of work, and he's with his mom. And he's like, he'd been off the whole weekend. He's like, I can't wait to see Andrew, play with Andrew, have a good time with Andrew. And Taylor's mom looks at him and says, what do you think Andrew does? He might be pretty busy right now. And he said, what do you mean busy? He's my handler. And she said, Andrew's the director of the movie. And Taylor went, that's impossible. And she said, why? He goes, because directors aren't fun. And so that was another memorable moment where we would just have, it was such a tough movie to make. And I'll give you one more, and then I'll move on from the question, but it's a good question. And it involves the N-word, where I had become, after 16 years having written this, very comfortable with that word in my head on the page. I'd written a lot of it. We didn't pull any punches. We tried to make it real, and that was real. And it wasn't until we were auditioning that we were in the room. There was an older African-American gentleman, and it was a scene where we had to call him. The scene calls for us, really belittling him and the N-word. And in the middle of the audition, the man broke down and just started weeping. And it was at that moment that I realized this word, this pain, these feelings, they're really, really big. They're way deeper than, and so it was a good lesson for me that I'd become comfortable because it was on the page. But the second it's not on the page, the second it's in the air, the second it's in reality, this pain is so deep and so real. I mean, we stopped the audition, and we had to take care of him because it somehow it jarred a memory or something within him where he felt it. And we had to be very careful throughout that. Now, the Reverend Kennedy, the real guy, he's always like, I hate the N-word. I hate the N-word. If you're going to say it, say it. And so there's a lot of grays in the movie. There's a lot of grays in life, so.
When he said that, if you're going to say it, were you like, no?
Well, no. I mean, he's really adamant about that. He's really adamant about, he thinks the N-word is BS. He's just like, if you're going to say
way
that,
of saying the word without
say
saying
it.
Yeah.
My daughter actually said it best. She said, we can't say it because we don't know how it feels to have it said.
Of course.
And I was like, quiet you. She was 15 at the time, but she had more wisdom than I did about that experience. So.
We have time for one more question. It's from Jay right here. Hey.
Hi.
Hey.
With this being based on a true story and all the interviews that you had to go through, what are some of the discoveries that you made throughout your process that you may not have known beforehand? That's
a great question. In anything that I've done, I go in and I immerse myself in the place, in the characters, and the people. I befriend them. I try to get their trust, and I show up. I still talk to Mike Burden. I still talk to Judy Burden, and I still talk to the Reverend and the congregation. If you don't do that, you're not going to have the reality. Even in the most fantastic story that I'm working on now, I spent a lot of time in North Carolina. I spent a lot of time in the environment. I wanted to know what they knew. And if you don't do that, you're just sitting in an office in Burbank regurgitating other memories and other movies. So I'll give you one example, and then I know we have to go. But the one example is this. When I spent a lot of time in Lawrence, South Carolina, and I'm from New York, and, I spent a lot of time in the South as a kid, but I lived there, and I didn't have this experience. I'm riding around with Clarence Simpson, who is played by Usher, and he's based on, so Clarence Simpson was never on welfare or anything like that. But, and he was the one who said to me at one point, he said, I feel sorry for them boys. I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, what are you talking about? And he said, yeah, he said, well, for me, from where I'm sitting, he said, poor, Southern, male, black, well, supposed to be. Poor, Southern, male, white, ain't supposed to be. They're the lowest of the low, and people treat them like that. They treat them worse than they treat us. So I feel sorry for them boys, because the only thing they got is they think they're better than us. And he said, and that ain't nothing. I never would have thought that. I never would have even dreamed of that concept unless I had gone down there, spent enough time riding around with them, talking to people, getting to know them in a way that they would tell me something like that. And that line ends up in the movie.
It ends up in the Reverend's mouth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Burden also, I spent so much time with him that at one point he said to me, and this is what he said, the exact quote is something like, if I call you my enemy, I'll walk through heaven, I'll slap God for you. But if I call you my friend, I'll walk through hell and I'll smack the devil for you. And he was talking about me, and I went, I've never heard anything like that in my life, and I put that in the movie. So
we also kind of like, I like that. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I like that a lot.
I like the fact that you're telling me that you're a really good friend of mine in that way, and I put it in the movie when Mike has to say, I'm your friend. That's the kind of stuff you're not going to get unless you go there. And I don't care where it is. I did a Vietnamese gangster movie. I went down to Westmoreland, California, and I went to Vietnamese gang clubs until they said, like, I don't know what you're doing here, but you need to be gone. I'm doing a movie that has to do with a lot of drugs right now. I went to West Virginia and Kentucky. I went down there forever. I went up into the hollers and saw what's going on down there. And that gives you the specificity. That's not the heart of the movie, but it certainly will give you the specificity to make the movie feel real and to make it real for you. And also, someone asked me, what is the most important thing? And I said, the most important thing to getting an independent film made is passion. By making a connection to the environment, by making a connection to the real people, by making a connection, even if you're writing fantasy, that will spark your passion. So a lot of the people that I've met with now recently on this last movie, I'm not using them in the movie, but I got them. I know them. I feel like I have an obligation to tell a story about them. So.
Well, the movie is incredible. Congratulations, Andrew. When does it open? When can people see Burden?
So it opens limited February 28th, and then it expands out there going forward to more cities and more cities throughout Easter.
Congratulations, Andrew Heckler, everybody. Let's hear it.
Thank you very much.